Beloved child, pause here for a moment. Do not let your hand move past this message, because what came to light last night was not a small detail, and it was not an ordinary conversation. Something hidden inside the past relationship of the person you truly love was finally brought into the open, and the truth did not arrive quietly. It entered the room like a sudden wind through a closed window. It changed the expression on their face. It made them question memories they had carried for far too long. And before tonight ends, you need to understand why this revelation has everything to do with you. You may believe that the past is finished simply because time has moved forward, but some chapters do not truly end when people walk away. They end when the truth is finally understood. Last night, the person you love discovered that a part of their old story had been built on incomplete information, hidden motives, and words that were never as sincere as they once appeared. They did not go looking for this truth. It found them. And when it did, the first person who entered their heart was not the one from their past. It was you. Stay here. Do not skip what follows, because the most important part has not yet been revealed. What happened last night was not only about an old relationship. It was about why this person has been hesitant with love, why they sometimes seem close and then suddenly distant, why they have struggled to trust what feels genuine, and why your presence has affected them more deeply than they have ever admitted. The truth about their past did not merely expose another person. It exposed the wound they have been hiding behind their silence. For a long time, they believed that the ending of that past relationship happened because they were not enough. They replayed old conversations, searched for mistakes in their own behavior, and quietly wondered whether they had somehow caused everything to fall apart. They carried questions they never spoke aloud. They questioned their value. They questioned their judgment. And even when they appeared strong, part of them remained trapped in an invisible courtroom, constantly putting their own heart on trial. But last night, something changed. A conversation began unexpectedly. It may have started with a simple question, a forgotten message, a name mentioned in passing, or someone finally deciding they could no longer keep silent. At first, the person you love did not understand the importance of what they were hearing. They listened politely. They tried to remain calm. Yet as each detail emerged, the pieces began arranging themselves into a picture they could no longer ignore. Someone knew more than they had admitted. Someone had witnessed what happened behind the scenes. Someone had watched the past relationship unravel while the person you love was being given only part of the story. And when that hidden witness finally spoke, the truth was sharper than anyone expected. The person from their past had not walked away simply because love had faded. There had been outside influence, concealed conversations, and decisions made long before the final goodbye. Certain words spoken to the person you love had been carefully chosen to make them doubt themselves. Certain moments had been twisted. Certain promises had been offered while other plans were already forming in secret. This revelation did not fill the person you love with anger first. It filled them with silence. A deep, stunned silence. Because suddenly, memories that had never made sense began to explain themselves. The unusual distance. The unexplained changes. The coldness that arrived without warning. The moments when affection seemed real one day and absent the next. The person you love had blamed themselves for all of it, but last night they realized that they had been carrying guilt that never belonged to them. Do not move away from this message yet. Something much greater is waiting beneath this truth. When the person you love finally understood what had happened, they did not only think about what they had lost. They thought about how that past pain had affected the way they treated you. They remembered the moments when you offered sincerity and they questioned it. They remembered when you showed patience and they wondered whether it was temporary. They remembered the times you tried to come closer and they protected themselves by stepping back. And for the first time, they saw the pattern clearly. They had not been afraid of you. They had been afraid that history would repeat itself through you. This realization shook them more deeply than the truth about the past relationship itself. Because now they could see that you had been paying an emotional price for damage you did not create. You had been standing before a door that was not locked because of anything you had done. It was locked because someone before you had taught their heart to confuse love with danger, closeness with uncertainty, and promises with disappointment. Yet you remained. Perhaps not always physically. Perhaps not always through constant communication. But your energy remained. Your kindness remained. Your sincerity remained. Even when circumstances became complicated, something about you continued to feel different from everything they had known before. Last night, when the truth came to light, the difference between you and their past became impossible to ignore. They compared your words to the words they had once believed. They compared your patience to the pressure they had once endured. They compared the peace they feel around you to the confusion that once controlled them. And that comparison revealed something they had been resisting for a long time. You were never another version of their past. You were the evidence that love could arrive differently. You were the person who made them feel seen without demanding that they perform for affection. You noticed the changes in their voice. You sensed when they were carrying something heavy. You understood the meaning behind silences that others ignored. Even when you did not know the full story, your heart recognized that there was a hidden battle inside them. And heaven saw every moment when you wondered whether your care mattered. It mattered. Every gentle word reached places they did not know how to show you. Every time you chose understanding over judgment, you weakened a wall that had existed long before you arrived. Every time you refused to become cruel in response to their confusion, you gave them an experience their past had not prepared them to receive. But there is another part of last night's revelation, and this is where the story becomes even more personal. The person who revealed the truth did not stop after explaining what had happened in the past. They asked the person you love a question. A simple question. Yet it changed the entire direction of the conversation. They asked, "Who do you think about now when you imagine feeling safe with someone?" The person you love did not answer immediately. They looked away. Their breathing changed. And your face appeared in their mind before they could control it. This was not a rehearsed answer. It was not a decision made through logic. It rose from the deepest place in their heart. In that moment, they realized that whenever they imagine being truly understood, they think of you. Whenever they imagine being able to speak without pretending, they think of you. Whenever they imagine a love that does not force them to abandon themselves, they think of you. Still, they did not speak your name right away. Not because they were uncertain. Because saying it aloud would make everything real. For months, perhaps longer, they have tried to place your connection inside smaller explanations. They have called it timing. They have called it friendship. They have called it confusion. They have told themselves that what they feel will eventually become easier to ignore. But last night, those explanations collapsed one by one. The truth about their past removed the excuse they had been using to avoid the truth about you. Stay until the end of this part, because the final moment of that conversation is where everything changed. After the question was asked, the person you love began speaking slowly. They admitted that there was someone who had treated them with a kind of care they did not know how to accept. Someone who made them feel hopeful and afraid at the same time. Someone whose absence felt louder than the presence of others. Someone they had tried to forget, only to find that the feeling returned in quiet moments. The person listening already knew who they meant. They said, "Then why are you still allowing the past to decide what happens with this person?" That sentence struck the center of their heart. Because it was true. They had been allowing an old betrayal to influence a new possibility. They had been asking you to prove things you had never broken. They had been expecting you to answer for someone else's choices. They had been holding back love, not because they lacked it, but because they feared what would happen if they finally allowed it to become visible. And last night, for the first time, they admitted something they had not even fully admitted to themselves. They said they were afraid that you had already stopped waiting. They wondered whether their hesitation had pushed you too far away. They wondered whether the silence between you had grown beyond repair. They wondered whether you had interpreted their guardedness as indifference. They feared that while they were protecting themselves from being hurt, they may have wounded the one person who had never intended to harm them. My child, you need to hear this clearly. Their distance was never proof that you were unimportant. In many moments, it was proof that you were more important than they knew how to handle. People do not always run from what means nothing. Sometimes they run from what has the power to change everything. You awakened a desire in them that felt dangerous only because it was real. With you, they could not hide behind shallow feelings. With you, they could not pretend that companionship alone was enough. Your connection called them toward honesty. It made them confront the places where fear had been making decisions. It made them recognize that love cannot be experienced fully while one hand remains wrapped around an old wound. Last night, that old wound finally began to open for healing. Not through revenge. Not through bitterness. Through understanding. They saw that the past relationship had not ended because they were unworthy of love. It ended because what they were offered was not strong enough to honor the depth of what they carried. They saw that the rejection they once personalized was actually redirection. They saw that what broke them also prepared them to recognize the difference between attention and devotion, between promises and consistency, between someone who enjoys their presence and someone who truly values their soul. And when they thought of true value, they thought of you again. Something huge is waiting inside the next part of this truth, because after your name finally left their lips, the person revealing the secret reacted in a way they did not expect. They became quiet. Then they said, "There is something else you need to know about that person." The person you love looked up immediately. Their entire expression changed. The conversation was no longer only about the past. It was now about you. For one suspended moment, the room felt completely still. The person you love leaned forward, sensing that another revelation was coming. They asked what the speaker meant. But instead of answering directly, the speaker asked whether they had ever wondered why you remained compassionate even when you had every reason to become cold. That question disturbed them. Because they had wondered. They had noticed your restraint. They had noticed that you could have exposed your pain, yet you often carried it quietly. They had noticed that you did not try to destroy their peace even when your own heart was unsettled. They had noticed the dignity with which you handled moments that could have made another person bitter. The speaker then revealed that you had understood more than the person you love realized. You may not have known every detail, but you sensed that their past had left them afraid. You recognized that some of their behavior came from pain rather than lack of feeling. You gave them more grace than they believed they deserved. When they heard this, something inside them broke open. Their eyes filled. Not because they felt weak. Because they suddenly understood the cost of your patience. They saw that while they were wondering whether they could trust you, you were quietly choosing not to punish them for what someone else had done. While they were protecting their heart, you were trying to protect the connection. While they were questioning your intentions, you were questioning whether they would ever feel safe enough to believe the love you were offering. This realization brought them to a place they had avoided for too long: responsibility. They could no longer blame timing for everything. They could no longer hide behind confusion. They could no longer pretend that silence had no consequences. Last night, they admitted that they owed you honesty. Not partial honesty. Not a vague explanation. The whole truth. They said there were things they needed to tell you about why they pulled away, why certain moments frightened them, and why they sometimes seemed to change after becoming emotionally close. They said they wanted you to know that their hesitation did not come from the absence of love. It came from the terrifying presence of it. Do not skip this next truth, because it reveals why tonight matters. The person you love left that conversation with a decision forming inside them. They did not want another night to pass while you remained unaware of what had changed. They felt a strong desire to reach toward you, but fear stood beside that desire. They began thinking of what to say, how to say it, and whether you would even believe them after so much uncertainty. They opened a message and stared at the empty space. They typed a few words. Then erased them. They tried again. This time, they wrote more. They admitted that something had happened last night. They admitted that they had learned the truth about their past. They admitted that the revelation had forced them to see how deeply that old experience had affected the way they responded to you. But before they could continue, their hands stopped. Because the next sentence would require them to reveal the one truth they have guarded more carefully than any secret from their past. They would have to tell you what they truly feel. They would have to say that losing you has become more frightening than the possibility of being hurt. They would have to admit that every attempt to move forward without addressing this connection has failed. They would have to confess that they have compared every emotional bond to what they feel with you, and nothing has carried the same weight. They would have to reveal that the truth from last night did not make them want to return to the past. It made them want to stop running from their future. And in that future, they saw you. Heaven has not brought this message to tell you to chase, force, or control what happens next. You are being reminded that your value has never depended on someone else's speed of understanding. You are being shown that what felt like rejection may have been a battle occurring inside a heart that had not yet learned how to receive what you offered. Yet love cannot remain hidden forever. Eventually, truth demands movement. Eventually, the heart must choose whether it will keep obeying fear or begin obeying what it knows. Last night brought the person you love to that choice. They are standing at the edge of an emotional decision. One direction leads back toward silence, protection, and regret. The other leads toward honesty, vulnerability, and the possibility of repairing what has been left unfinished between you. Something inside them is urging them not to wait. They feel that tonight carries significance. They feel that if they ignore this moment, the distance may become harder to cross. They feel that you may be entering a new season where you no longer accept uncertainty as a substitute for love. And they are right. You have changed. You are no longer the same person who once begged internally for clarity. You are learning to honor your peace. You are learning that love should not require you to abandon your dignity. You are learning that understanding someone's wounds does not mean allowing those wounds to endlessly wound you. The person you love can sense this shift, even from a distance. They know that your energy is no longer waiting in the same way. They know that your heart still cares, but something within you has become stronger. And this is why the truth surfaced now. Not to return you to confusion. To bring hidden things into the light before a decision becomes permanent. There is one more detail from last night that you have not yet heard. It is the detail that caused the person you love to rise from their seat, walk toward the window, and remain there without speaking. The one who revealed the truth told them that the person from their past had recently been asked whether they regretted how everything ended. Their answer was unexpected. They did not speak about missing the relationship. They did not speak about wanting another chance. Instead, they admitted that they always knew the person you love would eventually meet someone who would love them more sincerely than they had. Then they mentioned something specific. Something they had heard about you. Something that made the person you love realize that your connection had been discussed long before last night. They turned from the window and asked, "What exactly did they say about us?" The answer began with your name. But what came after your name was so revealing, so personal, and so impossible to dismiss that the person you love immediately reached for their phone. They opened your conversation. They stared at the last words between you. And then they began typing the message that could change everything before tonight ends.